Hello again, this is Greg with MVC series tutorials, actually MVC3 we're going to be going over. In this tutorial we're going to go over routing, or URL routing engine is the technical term. And as you can see, we're using the same project as we did last time. We've got this controller called Awesomeness Controller, and we've currently made the folders for models, but we don't have them in there yet because they're going to be part of another tutorial. And we have one single view, does very little, and it is linked from the index here to the action index here. So I know that this can get kind of confusing because in a way it's, this magical code in the background. What is this engine doing? How is it working? How do I know it's working? How do I know what to do with it, right? So instead of just taking my word for it that this view is tied to this, or this action is tied to this view by name, and that this controller takes that half of the thing, let's just try it out and make sure we understand where this is coming from. So just to show you where it is, there's a global ASAX file, usually called the globals file, this exists in web forms and MVC, but what we're going to talk about is not something that you generally use in web forms. Basically what the global ASX file is it's a series of methods that can be overloaded and allow you, because the global's ASX class file gets loaded every time somebody accesses an application. The overloaded methods allow you to do stuff like here, where you can see there's a protected method called application start, and here they're registering all the areas. Okay, and areas we're going to talk about a different tutorial. It's making an entity database for various things. It's not really even going anywhere. It's your local DB. The globals filters and the globals routes, which routes or register routes. And what this will do is when the application is started on each individual client or browser, that's very important to understand. It is not on like application load. It is on when somebody accesses the application itself. It's not like when you restart IIS or anything like that. So and there is a application stop, and there's a application error, so that if the whole world goes to hell, you can at least recover something, maybe send the user somewhere else, and take the exception and log it if you're not doing try catches, or your try catch is not in the proper location and it keeps bubbling up to the top. So that gives you an idea. You can do a lot of stuff in the global ASX file, a lot of stuff that's outside of the scope of this tutorial though. So right here is where you'll see the main event here, the map route. Okay, this is the default route. As you can see, the name of it is default, and what it does is it looks for the controller name, the action that you're trying to access, and then there's an optional ID. This is usually some kind of ID that determines like what page you're on for the application to be doing pagination. It could be having an ID for a cataloged item so that you know what the item is they're trying to save or update. You don't have to do it that way. In fact, I usually recommend doing it inside of the post itself, unless you need to put it into the URL, which in certain cases you do. Again, this is optional. This does not have to be there. These two, on the other hand, are required. But if you happen not to have this or this, right here it gives you the default route. So if we hit F5, just to make sure everybody knows that I'm not like joking them, you'll see I just ran it and it can't find the resource. Well, why can't it find the resource at all in the routing table? Well, the reason being is because the default location and the only location it actually knows about, that when you don't put anything in works, it thinks is home index. Why is that? Well, that's because we started with a template, and if you remember from the last tutorial, when I went over it, I deleted the home controller, the home views, and everything to do with that stuff because I wanted to start from scratch and not have you guys have any assumptions that this is things are already done for you. So with that said, when you're trying to go and use this default location, it doesn't exist in the application anymore. So, but what's interesting is look at this. If I do awesomeness, right, it actually is already there. Boom, it takes us to the in the main page on our awesomeness page or view. So why is that? Well, I'll tell you why. The reason why is because this default route, although this is the primary that it will do if you don't put anything, if it sees you put anything in here at all, in the URL at all, it is going to try to look at these things and say, okay, what can I do with this? Another case in point, if I run this again, I know I should have kept it up, but if we do awesomeness, right, and let's do test. So it's not going to find it, right? But if I do index, there you go, it's going to find it. Alright, and just to show you, just so you know, it is there. Okay? So now what we'll do is let's change the route. Right? We got rid of the home. We're like, we don't want home. We've got our own awesomeness controller. There's no reason to have a non-awesomeness controller, right? So let's paste this down here. So one thing you'll notice right off the bat is that these two, obviously I copied it, so these have the same name, right? You can never have the same name. It's only one route name per master route, and it will throw an exception immediately. You won't even get past go. Alright, so let's call this an awesome route. Okay, and then we're going to change this to awesomeness. Okay, because remember, as far as the controller is concerned, because they didn't want you to have this whole thing within your URL, the first half until it finds controller, anything up to that point is fair game to be the name. Okay, obviously without outside of characters that are not going to play nicely in the URL. You're not going to be a good place for here, and I doubt you can even do it, quite honestly. Let's see if you do awesome like that. Oh yeah, it actually lets you do it, but I don't think it would be a very good thing to do. Let's leave it at that. Even if it does let you do it, it's a very bad thing to do. So, awesomeness. Alright, see, we even screw up on our tutorials. So now you have this, right? So let's run it. Let's see what happens. Okay, now you see how it didn't work, right? So the reason behind that is because when you already have a default route, okay, although that this failed, it's still going to default to trying to do this on its own. And if it can't, it will just fail. It is not like anybody from the networking world routing where it will look for the first one that meets its criteria the most. Is not going to use these that way. These are only for default on whatever it hits. So if we were to do this, whoops, I did not. Little hiccup there too. Awesomeness. Oh no, I don't have to care about that. Awesomeness. How I spelled it here. Awesomeness. Yep. Okay. So let's try that one more time. Okay, so there you go. So now I hit the the awesomeness controller. It routed to the index action. The index action routed it to the view. So let's, before I get off here and go on to the next tutorial, let's just recap here what that happened. So what that did was it looked for the awesomeness controller, and then it would look for the the index action within that controller, and then whatever this action happens to just return to that view. So it looks for the view in the folder, and boom, there it is. So that's the basics of routing and how you would utilize them. Again, there's other ways to utilize them in areas, which we'll go over much later in a much later tutorial about areas when we have a better understanding of models, controllers, and views, and how that all interrelates. Then we'll step it up a notch and go to areas. Alright? So thank you very much for listening, and if you like it, please subscribe.